Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and we also have.
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
So today, Calvin is going to lead us on this mission. What's up? What say you?
Well, guy reached out to me the other day and said, "Hey, I actually would like to invest in some comics." And now internally, I laughed because because I always think, "Why do you want to invest in comic books? When do you want to invest in something like oil or gold?" But people do see comic books as a viable, legitimate investment. They're not wrong. I just don't feel necessarily the same way. I do invest, but not with that same type of mentality that I'm going to sell this off like stock. I don't think comics quite work that way. But he asked for a list and of I thought would be the top 10 comics to invest in. And so we're going to do that today on the show. Top 10 comics for you to invest in. Now, some of these are probably going to be pricey, but you can definitely work your way towards one if you're willing to buy it and you're willing to hold it, as opposing to, quote, flip it, unquote.
hmm So you're gonna start from 10, going to one, or just
Uh,
random?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to do like put them in any particular order.
hmm
But let's just just 10 comics that I think are, good comics to put your money into. Well, just to give a little background, because both of us remember what happened to comics in the 1990s,
hmm
where comics had a two it was like a 2 to 4 year expansion, maybe less. I'm not sure how long it was, but it got to the point where you had a lot of outside people who saw comic books as something viable. So, and this is circa Image Comics, Death of Superman, around that time. So this is like what Image is founded when? About 90, 91,
92.
92. Okay, so it was all the
Yeah.
same year then. So we're looking at maybe 92 to about, I'm trying to remember when the crash happened.
Well,
The crash.
no, yeah, keep going. I was only gonna say there was a steady growth from, like from the 80s, and it was just steadily getting more. They had big money books, but there would be like things that you wouldn't expect to build. Then when those X-Men books, like what's up when you do the crossovers, those things were building, and you can see the price going up for reasons unknown, and then going right to where you were, where it just shot up. That's when it was just like, bing. With the X Men, but more what you think. I think also you're thinking like the X Men books and the Spider Man, those things that were selling. That's where those were the Image guys. So that's like 90, 91, where those numbers first started happening, where people were like, "Wow, there's really big money in comic books." So you're right, because it was those same Image guys. They were just working for Marvel and getting those numbers.
Yeah, so we've got some big numbers, and then as fat. Well, I can't say as fast as it happened. There was this really big crash, and since then, comics have been a buyer's market for, we're looking almost 20 years at the end of the day. Because of what happened, and that left. I mean, it just left a real. It was a bitter pill, and it left a really long, lingering bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people, both buyers, collectors, sellers, that whole thing. Now you have a different market with different fundamentals, and you know you see that there's a very big resurgence in terms of the value of comics, not just interest, but the monetary value. A lot of those prices got pushed up. But what I also noticed is that they're tending to retain that value. For instance, you had a book like Godzilla. First appearance of Godzilla in an American comic is Godzilla #1, Marvel Comics. I forget the year. Might be 76.
Mhm.
So at one point that was a $10 book. That was a $10 book. Then it creeped up. And anytime something with Godzilla would come out, the price on the book would go up. So it might go 10, and then when the movie comes out, you might double. You might get 20 because of the interest. At one point, I looked, and the book had gotten to as high as $50. And this was when one of the Godzilla movies had come out. The second one had come out. Then there was the whole Godzilla versus Kong. By that point, the book was selling for $100. It was selling for $100, and I was like, "Wow, that's a pretty good number for Godzilla." But at the same point, I didn't think that was a bad price for the first appearance of Godzilla in an American comic. I just didn't think that was a bad price at all. I think, hey, that's a book that should be there in terms of, if Godzilla is a really popular character, and worldwide. A lot of people love the kaiju. There's no reason for that book to be as low as it was before. But I thought a lot of that was due to the movie. The movie came left, and then I checked the prices the other day, and it's still there. It's still there at that. It's still there at that price. It didn't dip. It didn't go all the way back to 50 or 10. It's maintaining that value, which shows that, yeah, the fundamentals are definitely different, but also pretty strong at the end of the day. So, without further ado, why don't we get into the first book? And coming down the
Good.
pike, first book. Everybody ready? First book is Tomb of Dracula, number 10 from 1973. First appearance of Blade.
Oh, I think I'll say Blade.
Yeah,
Okay.
great
Why not
book
issue one? Issue one. The whole
because
thing for
nobody
Dracula. Nobody cares about Dracula on his own.
because nobody owns Dracula, and to nail down the first appearance of Dracula, it's not even in a Marvel comic. It's in another comic that most guys have never heard about, similar to James Bond, and the value just isn't. Hey, it's just not there. But Blade, uh, Tomb of Dracula, even for the prices that you're seeing now, is still a good buy. It's still a very good buy. It has yet to reach. There's plenty of room on that book. There's plenty of room on that book. So even if you're looking at it like, I don't know, it's kind of pricey. There were high numbers on that book before, and it's still going up, but it's not out of reach. And that's where you want to be with any book. You don't want to look at a book and say, oh, well, it's just too much money. It's $5,000 for this book. I can't afford to pay that. When am I ever going to see $10,000 on? It's not there yet, but it's a book that will get there. So Tomb of Dracula. Tomb of Dracula, number 10, 1973, first appearance of Blade. Okay, that's the first book on our list. Coming up next, Action Comics 252, first appearance of Supergirl.
Okay.
Why this book? I looked at this book the other day and realized it's affordable. I didn't think it would be. I was looking to pick up another copy for myself, and I thought the book would be double the numbers that I saw it going for. But I was looking at graded copies, mid-grade copies, and I said, you can get this book with some conscientious saving. I was just really surprised at how low it was, and knowing that eventually you will see Supergirl proper, Kara Zor-El, blonde, in a film. That's going to happen, and she'll be teen, not the alternative versions that we've seen, not the Supergirl from the WB. We will see that Kara Zor-El. She'll be in the film, and then that book is just going to skyrocket, and it's not going to come back down to where it is now. But it's affordable. I'm not saying it's $20, but it is something that you can work your way towards getting. So, Action Comics 252, first appearance of Supergirl.
Okay.
Keeping on with the girl theme, Detective Comics 359, first appearance of Batgirl.
Okay.
Now, both of these books, if Supergirl is affordable, Batgirl is really affordable, surprisingly so. Surprisingly so. And I look at both of these two characters. It's amazing. I look at both of these two characters. There's a show called DC Superhero Girls. There's a whole generation of kids who watch that show, love those characters, and they'll grow up, and eventually they'll have the wherewithal to buy these things, or they may be able to do it now as they're coming into their teens, what have you. You got a Batgirl show coming out. It's coming down the pike as well. And I just looked, and I looked at one copy, and it was a really nice looking copy, and the guy only wanted $700 for it. Now, of course, some people are like, oh, only 700. That's a really good price for the first appearance of Batgirl in a really nice grade. And a nice grade, I'm going to say, is like a 7.0 and up. Once you have that, it's a really nice copy, and it's someplace that you can get into, and you can buy it, watch it appreciate, not have to worry that you made a bad move with your investment. And that's also something to look at as well. If it's something if you're looking at a book with characters and they have, it's just something that has outreach to kids, and the kids are going to grow up just like you grew up, and then they're going to be interested in the books and the stuff just like you were interested in these particular characters. Hey, that is something that you would definitely want to keep in mind.
Well, will they actually get to read any of these books if they buy them? They're probably
Yeah, what's nothing?
sealed up
Nothing's
in
gonna.
one of those things, in those CGC things. Here's my background
No, you.
son.
Oh, oh, well, I'm glad you pointed. I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm really glad you pointed that out. I'm not recommending anybody buy a book, grade a graded copy of a book. I don't recommend that. I always recommend that you buy an ungraded copy. Okay. Once you buy a graded copy, your value is locked in, and it's much harder. It's going to be much harder for you to move that for any price because everybody knows it at that point. So if it's a six, it's a six. There's very little that you can do with it. However, when you have an ungraded copy, it's really in the eye of the beholder. And I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I had to help somebody out.
Okay.
Oh, once you have an ungraded copy, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Mhm.
So where something's a 7.0, people are like, oh, it's only a 7. But you take it out of the case and it looks really good. It presents very well. I prefer that. I prefer to have a book that I look at it and I really enjoy it. I love the way that it looks, no problem, as opposed to I grade it and somebody else believes, well, this thing that looks so beautiful, that's only a 6.5. You're like, huh? And then you're all crestfallen at the end of the day. So I recommend that you just buy a book that's ungraded. It's also better. It's also better if you do want to sell it later as well, if you are buying it for investment, because it's up to that person to make the determination, as opposed to there's some numbers hanging over it. That's that's pretty much, it's almost like a scarlet letter if it's the wrong grade. You don't want to be there.
Okay. So then what's next?
Well, you got to go with one of the but the all time favorites, and that's going to be Incredible Hulk 181. This
Okay.
is not now. This is a book that for a lot of people is going to be out of reach. That's just that. It's going to be out of reach. However, that doesn't mean you don't try for it. You might be able to find a lower grade copy, and even the lower grade copies still retail very well. It's something that you want to keep on your radar. You might find an auction, you get lucky on the auction, or you may find that it's a part of a lot and
Mhm.
the person is using that book to sell the whole lot. You may be able to negotiate some things there, but it's definitely a book that's worth having. It's definitely a book that's worth having in the overall collection, especially if you're looking for an investment. It's the first appearance. It's the first appearance. Oh well, that's a that I don't want to get into any debate, but it's considered the first appearance of Wolverine.
Mhm.
And I don't think you really need to say much more than that. I mean, forget about the classic cover art by Herb Trimpe. Forget about the fight between the Hulk and the Wendigo, and then the Hulk and the Wolverine that goes on in there. This is one of the breakout characters that from the Bronze Age Wolverine. It's just a no brainer. That should go on your list.
Why do you say forget about that? Meaning that's to the good or what? What do you mean?
When I say forget about,
Yeah, saying that to the good, like you got all the stuff that's already in the book, or what do you mean exactly?
well, this goes back to what you said before. I don't know how many people buy this stuff to actually read it.
Okay.
So I don't know how many people are buying. I got a copy of Hulk 180. I mean, did you ever have a copy of Hulk 181?
No, I've only had in the house. My brother had 180 and 182, and the other one I think at that point was probably like $50 or something like that, ranging between 20 and $50. It probably was around $50. I might have. I don't think I've seen it for anything lower than around that. But as a kid, it could have been one that was 20, but I think we saw it at $50, and at some point it was like 70 to 100, some point before like the mid 80s or something like that. So it's always been a high book. But my brother had a couple other issues, and then of course getting a reprint of it, they reprinted those two issues, so I had that. So I think there was a reprint anywhere else. Yeah, just remember having that reprint of the Hulk. But my brother had a bunch of those Hulk of that period. So, but yeah, that's the closest I got to seeing it, and besides the reprint.
I have the original.
Oh,
I have the original, and I don't know how many times. I don't remember how many times I read that book. Read that book so many times, and so I'm so familiar with the story back and forth. I've discussed the story with you. It's a great story. I just don't know if people are going to be like, "Oh, wow, this is great," because there are people who legitimately want to buy the book. They want to own a copy. They want to read the story. They want to read why it is that this character, or what about this character in those early days, led him to become this really popular character. It's like I'll get a key. I mean, I sell comics, and every once in a while I'll get a book, and this is a book I'm going to sell, and I will still very carefully, very gingerly open it up, read through it, because this may be the only opportunity I ever have to read this story in my hands, okay, with my own eye, that I can, okay, this is it, and to see what the character first looked like. If you see, well, this is actually going to be the next book, so I won't give it away right yet. But if you see what the design of the character is, and then how much it changed, well, won't be a book that I'm going to do. But if you see the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon, and he's really called Rocky Raccoon, and you see how that design changes, or even Howard the Duck, and how that design changes. It's just real. I just find that stuff to be really interesting. But a lot of guys, no, they buy the book, it's going to stay in the bag, and it's not coming out until it's time to sell it.
mm.
Oh, with that ding, that brings us to our next book, Amazing Spider-Man 129, first appearance of the Punisher.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like one that should be up there.
Hey, this is, I mean, classic cover, great art. Who's the art? Was it, if I remember correctly, it's both John Romita Sr. and Gil Kane on that cover?
On the cover, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And this is another character, sort of like Wolverine, where he comes out and that's his early form, and nobody knows that this character is going to become as big as he is by the 90s. Because to be honest, he's a third tier anti hero character that appeared in Spider Man, and they used him. He obviously worked in Spider Man because they brought him back, but to the extent where he would be carrying 3 or 4 books on his own in the 1990s and have that sort of popularity, I don't think anybody really foresaw that. Or with Wolverine, it might have been a little bit more like, yeah, we got something here. We just need to push this dude to the forefront. The Punisher got really good treatment in the Amazing Spider-Man annual that Frank Miller did. That art was just gorgeous at the end of the day. But most importantly, the limited series, that first limited series with Mike Zeck's art, that was just killer. I don't think there was
Well,
anything stopping him after that. Oh, and of course his appearances in Daredevil.
I'll only add in that I think as far as the pros were not really connected to the character. I think for Punisher, I know that the fans were, because not just that, when he started to appear, there's like a Captain America cover where he's got his foot on Captain America's shield. He's got the gun to Captain America. It was just
Mm-hmm.
something that it was one of those books that you wanted to see. So you had that. Then and that's not
Right.
even connected to Frank Miller. It's just like, whoa, this is what I
That's just a
see
that's
that.
just an awesome that's an awesome cover.
So as far as fans is like, yeah, this guy is something, and the next thing you know, it's one of those books that cover the original cover, as you were pointing it out. That's like that's classic. So you can see, something that was more a like a was a Jerry Conway type of character, but the other pros were like not really seeing it, and then you could see like Frank Miller say, well, let's have him not just be this marksman, let him have some other things. And they make, I mean, he kind of plays to, there's other characters that were like this, but they weren't big either. But everything comes together when you see the costume. Like people look at it, oh, the white gloves, like no, 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 people don't, kids don't care. It's just like it's cool. The skull. He's got guns. There's like basic cool stuff. It goes along with the Death Wish and all those other movies that are out at all the
Yeah.
revenge stories. So it's like the kids knew. They did the let was it they did was it a Marvel preview where they let them do some backup stories of that. But it's like at the same time you had this thing that's going to hit, and then when you start to see it coming along, it's like Marvel still is not seeing the thing for that, and they're like, all right, let these classic guys that have been in Marvel forever, Stephen Grant and Mike Zeck, do something where they could just do whatever they want. And the next thing you know, they get this miniseries that like just a big hit, and then they're like, all right, well, so we should do a series of that. And it's like, and it's I always call I don't know that we strike there signing off because I always think it's like they did the Dark Knight, and then DC, even though Frank is being famous and he's going to be doing picking the projects next, Klaus is there. You know, Klaus only did the first five. That should have been the Batman start saying, Klaus, you're drawing Batman for a year. And I know Klaus wasn't into trying to stay with a book for too long, but it would have been good to see him kind of do that. But Marvel's like, hey, we're going to take this piece of the Dark Knight team and put it on there. And it was a big hit. And it was like soon after, it's like, wait a second. We got Punisher War Journal, and it's like, well, this art, I don't know who this guy is, but it looks pretty good. Let me get that. And then it's like, then it became the ground, the place where artists become successes. You know, you had Jim Lee come through there, the Punishers, X Men. That's the line. Then you had Willis, X Factor, X Men. It's like it was like you just hop leapfrogging to your biggest success through. Even Eric Larson was there, but he wasn't too much of a fan of the character. But you know that sort of lineage of you got on those books. They were the X Men, Punisher, Spider Man was kind of around there, and then all the rest of the Marvel books where it's like that was struggling. But yeah, it's interesting to talk about the Punisher because it was just something that was different Wolverine because Wolverine was cool, but the writers were kind of pushing the jerk aspect and the push pull of Byrne and Claremont trying to add his bits and Byrne trying to make add his bits, and the two of them started to make a freight train that just like grew with them adding stuff at the same time of blowing it up. Where Punisher, the kids knew this guy was cool, and Wolverine always looked cool, but it was just like he kind of get battered around in those early stories by Dave Cockrum. It would be kicked, knocked over, and it's just like, wow, this guy, he's just getting just a punching bag. And then next thing you know, you see that when that competitive spirits between Byrne and Claremont, they started to really add stuff. Whereas, but yeah, the Punisher is a character you could tell with the visual where they kind of people like, yeah, they had white gloves, but at the same time, for the time, it wasn't a big deal. We're not looking at it. We're looking at the skull. It's just like the guns. Yeah. What about the guns there? So the pros kind of didn't really see what they had. They had two of the next Spider-Mans on their they already had them in the book. So anyway, let's get back to the list. I chimed off for too long on that.
Oh no, that makes it. I'm pretty certain everybody listening is like, yeah, they don't want just a list. They want the juice. Anyway, next up, Batman Adventures number 12, first appearance of Harley Quinn. You'll see a theme: Harley Quinn, Batgirl, Supergirl. Any of those characters, they got a cartoon show. They're going to be imprinted in the minds of younger kids. They grow up, they remember these characters, they have an interest, and these are things that people want to own. They remember these things. I don't want to say nostalgia either, because there's a good portion of the time where as a kid there are things that you wanted. You may have wanted a copy of, you may have wanted just to own. You loved Harley Quinn as a character, and you looked at the book and you didn't have the money to buy it then, but you have the money to buy it now. And this is something that you've always wanted to own, not for nostalgic reasons, but you just always wanted a copy. Not, and that was something that you can work towards. So anything of that nature, those are things that I definitely recommend, because that's pretty much what people do now. I didn't have the money to own Fantastic Four #1, but I can buy it now, and I've always wanted to own it, and I've always wanted to own a copy. Okay, and this is not because of, I'm remembering my childhood. This is something I couldn't have, and I can have it now at the end of the day. Without a doubt, Harley Quinn, breakout character from the Batman animated series. It's a great book to own as well, if you can get it. There's two different copies. There's a direct edition and a newsstand copy. The newsstand copy worth more money, so that's definitely where you would try to put your money if you can. And you can still get good copies of this book for a few $100s. A graded copy is going to retail more, but you can still get this book ungraded for a few $100s and do very well for yourself at the end of the day, in terms of if you're looking at it as an investment. And without a doubt, that is a good investment. The character's already shown in 3 different forms of media that she can be successful It's without a doubt. Comics, cartoon, film, yeah, without a doubt, you can do that. I mean, well, you can definitely take the Harley Quinn movie. Well, it might have done better as a standalone movie as opposed to the whole Birds of Prey. I don't know really what to call it without dunking on it, but without a doubt, this is just the character that people like, and it's a fun character to play as well. If Margot Robbie has anything to say about it, so we definitely put that one on the list.
Okay. And what's next?
Have you been keeping count?
I don't know about the count. It
Yeah,
feels
I
like
didn't think so.
I think we're at five. I was supposed to keep count.
No, 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 no. We're not at five. This is because I got eight coming up next by my count.
Eight.
Yep.
Oh, you
Hey,
said this
just
is
want to know
number
because
eight. Okay.
yeah, this is number eight coming up. Not only do this because there's always somebody out there like, hey, you said 10. You only gave us eight.
Well,
Like, well, this is
we did a nine on the Ten Commandments.
yes,
A
I remember
classic.
that one. They never let us. They never let us get away. Well, and rightfully so. They don't let us get away with those. So, uh, well, this one, of course, is a no-brainer, and this is going to be Ultimate Fallout number 4, first appearance of Miles Morales.
Ultimate Fallout. This you really want to go with that? Ultimate Fallout? I
Yeah,
understand
you got
the
it.
first appearance of what's the name, but Ultimate Fallout.
Ultimate Fallout number 4, first appearance of Miles Morales. It's a no look. First appearance of Miles Morales is equivalent to the first appearance of Peter Parker for most people. Most people are not going to be able to afford a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. It's just not there. But Ultimate Fallout is still very doable. It's still very doable if you put a little bit of elbow grease to it. It's not out of sorts. Okay? So you can save, you can get there. You can get there. And this is without a doubt, I mean, Miles Morales right now, it's Black History Month. Miles Morales is the face of Marvel Comics. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. And mind you, he's not the first black superhero. Okay. He's not the only black superhero at Marvel, but somehow he became the face of Marvel Comics for Black History Month, which should show you his popularity and how much they're pushing that character, and how important he's going to be to Marvel. Now, I mean, he's important now, and how important he's going to be in the future. All right. So again, if you're looking, investment wise, that's a book that you want to pick up. Ultimate Fallout 4.
How much is that book?
Oh, the last copy that I picked up, but this was the variant cover. That was $1,100,
Yeesh.
ungraded, ungraded. But it's a book that I say I like to buy. I mean, I buy a wide range of comics, but I like to buy books that I know are going to appreciate in value, because if for any reason, I try to be a student of history. If for some reason people decide, hey, we're just not into comics and the bottom falls out, those comics are safe. Those comics aren't going anywhere. Amazing Fantasy 15 is always going to be the first appearance of Spider-Man. Ultimate Fallout 4 is always going to be the first appearance of Miles Morales. And the same for all the other ones that I'm picking. So this is what I think is money well spent. It's always going to be it's a blue chip book, if you will. The value is never going to drop out of the bottom. It's always going to be a comic that people are looking after. And if we're talking investment, that's what you want to do with the book. You're not buying it. We're not buying it because we want to have it as a collector. You're buying it because you're hoping to one day sell this off as an asset.
Mhm.
Right. So, what do you think of the list so far?
It's okay. I mean, I think there's some definite keys which make sense. Obviously, all of the female DC characters. Obviously, Wolverine. I mean, everything is pretty much online. I'm just the thing is the hard part for me when I go to like Miles and I get it, but it's really tough for him to be in this sort of not in Ultimate or over Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. That's what I would think they would do, like a comic book of Bendis, Top Guy, that be the first appearance, not in like Wildstorm Rising or or some other crossover thing where we throw him in there, where like the was it the Death Mate, like Image and what's the name, Death Mate, where we found the first appearance of Gen 13 type of deal. I was like, this guy's the top guy. I want to do a black Spider-Man. I want to have my first issue be Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. That's what I thought it was. Spider-Man dies, and no, he actually was around at the same time, right? The other Spider-Man was around. That was crazy. Anyway, yeah, that's the only reason why I kind of really bothers me that it was just not a number one issue that said here's a new character that we feel strong about, because that's where they talk about it. But when you find out it's in like a Death Mate, Wildstorm Rising, Infinite Crisis type of thing, where we introduce a character and then next thing you know it's like, shoosh, here we go. But anyway, that's my only critique.
All right. Well, then you'll love the next book
Oh
because
God.
our ninth book is Fantastic Four number five, first appearance of Doctor Doom.
That's a qual that's a yeah that's definitely that's a quality one. That's
And this is a book that is not on the radar for many people. It's just not. And Doctor Doom is such a great character. He has yet to be manipulated accurately in film, but we know that the Fantastic Four is coming to. It's coming to. They're going to be in the Marvel Universe proper, the MCU. Doctor Doom is going to be there, and Doctor Doom is a character who could easily be. I mean, Doctor Doom is a character that, as bad as Thanos might have been, Doctor Doom is worse in terms of being a villain because he's legitimate. He's legit. He's not Thanos where, hey, I'm gonna go. And I hate to do this because I enjoyed the earlier story with the Cosmic Cube and the Infinity Gauntlet until it became with Jim Starlin is like, well, look, I'm gonna go find the Holy Grail and the Spear of Destiny next, that type of stuff with Infinity Watch, Infinity Watch, Infinity Sleep, Infinity this, End of Infinity, Infinity No More. When it started, like really just like just out there at the end of the day. But I really enjoyed those two. I enjoyed those two storylines. I really did. But Doctor Doom is a more legitimate threat because Doctor Doom is a competent villain at the end of the day. He actually succeeds. He actually succeeds with long lasting effect in storylines to the point where the only way they can stop this is they got to like go back and do everything all over. And even then, in the 2099 storyline, he had achieved everything, and they were like, "No, there's nothing we can do about it." At least at that particular time. So, and the well, actually, I should split this. Doctor Fantastic Four number five, but in addition to Fantastic Four number five, and this book is very much undervalued and underlooked, Fantastic Four annual number two. I would try to get those as a parent because this is a real rarity
Is that
with
the history
two
of Doctor Doom? They have the
his origin, because
yeah.
his first appearance is in Fantastic Four number five, so everybody goes for that. But his origin, and this is a classic story, is in Fantastic Four annual number two. And that book for me is of equal, if not more value than Fantastic Four number five, because that's where you really understand who this character is. He meets Reed. We understand how he becomes who he is. It's such a big that is such a big origin story. He could have his own movie just based on that origin that they have in that film. And if they're smart, they'll do it. Or they'll do a they'll do a TV series on Disney Plus, even though I think it really does deserve cinematic treatment. So, without a doubt, Fantastic Four number five, and then if you want to tack something on to hedge your bet, Fantastic Four annual number two. Those are without a doubt. Those are book. I mean, I owned a few copies of Fantastic Four annual number two, and they're not going anywhere until Victor Von Doom makes his appearance in the MCU.
Well, we only hope that they do something solid with them. It's hard to do because a lot of those bits that he had, um, like the dinner with the heroes, is something that they used in Empire Strikes Back. Like that was definitely a Doom scene where he has the heroes can't use any of their powers. He has their inhibitor ray against them. And he's like, "All right, come." And he'd done that a couple of times in the story, where I think Rick Butler and Roy Thomas had recreated that scene to do it again in the '70s. So there's definitely a lot of bits, and you can see Kirby sort of take Doom another step further in Darkseid, where you just in the Darkseid in the Kirby one doesn't even fight, whereas you could see after the early Doom, slowly they kind of move Doom away. And there are hints because in the first story, Doom has a robot that is fighting, so you don't even know if the guy is really there. And that's been kind of the fun of the series, where it's like, is he actually, has he actually shown up this time? And to great effect, people have used that. Whereas on the other side, like Kirby went one step further, where it's like with Darkseid doesn't really fight at all. He uses the ultimate wipeout, or just uses the Omega Beam to send you a different time, and he just shows up and gets on Orion's nerves and such, and he doesn't really get into these, or brings people down to hell. Like brings Isaiah down that hell. So it's one of those things where Doctor Doom was kind of the precursor to all that stuff, and kind of the struggle with Doom is that he was kind of overused. He was kind of, like the top Marvel brass is like, hey, in the '70s, well, yeah, the Fantastic Four got him, but we got to use him for Avengers, and it's one of the fun stories where he, you know, like it's not like the Secret Wars. So it's got George Perez where Doom's fighting the Avengers, and you see him take out Captain America, and I'm like, yes, there's nothing Cap can do against Doom or a robot of Doom. That's one thing that people kind of forget when they have some of these characters. And it's not anything bad about Cap, but it's just like the wheelhouse of the abilities. But at the same time, Doom has been such where you see that last big story that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did, whereas he had got rid of their power, or got them that they couldn't utilize their powers against them, and he basically had them on their land, and he decides, that's it, you guys, just get out of here. You made me, disgrace something, this piece of art or something like that. I want you guys out. So just saying this sort of this weird logic that he has. So yeah, he's definitely a character. But I think every time they get to use him, they kind of try to find something, like try to figure something out. When you have the books have all the stuff there, and if you play it right, even if you don't even know if he showed up in the story, he can be, like it could be powerful. I think even because everyone's kind of struggled with Doombots at times, but at the same time, I think what's that story? In Acts of Vengeance, he didn't show up for the real thing. He's with the villains, and then next you know, the robot blows up, and it's like Doctor Doom didn't even show up for this. Avengers 1.5, and there's so many great stories. Everyone goes to I think the Iron Man story where they go to Camelot, that sort of thing. But anyway, you got a real physical one, and at the same time, you got a Doom where someone touches him, and he's like, "Who touched? Who dare touches Doom?" And he's like. And then at the same time, people are flipping out because how he's a Doom would totally let Arcade scratch a match on him. Doom, who touched Doom? No, so he's definitely a powerful character that has a great origin story. Ultimately, some of the stuff was used for Magneto, not the Holocaust stuff, but just having that connection with Xavier, that sort of thing, because that's the first time that's ever done, to having the heroes meet, as like outside of utilizing what was done with Superman, but doing it in a different way, where he was just like an asshole from the beginning. He's like, he was like, you're questioning what I did. No, I can't be in the
Well,
same
it's even
guy.
in his origin, because in his origin, I love the way it's pointed out that even his own father is like, no, you got to watch out for this kid.
Yeah,
And he's like, his father he spends all night keeping him warm, sheltering him as best
yeah,
as he can, and then he ends up dying. And then in his last moments, he's dying, and he's telling him, "No, you gotta, he's warning him. He's like, no, he's like, you gotta be careful, be careful." And he's like, and he sees how Victor reacts to the death, and he was like, "Oh, Victor thinks it's one thing," and I forget the guy who was taking care of his I forget his name because it was like somebody who was connected to Doom for a while. And he was like, no, the father wasn't talking about, protecting Doom. He's talking about protecting the world from this kid.
hmm
And this is the same guy who spent the whole night, he's giving his life so he could, giving his life so the kid could, so Victor Von Doom could live. So even there, those seeds are left of the just the destructive potential that this character has. I mean, he's just a really great character, and I've seen him used well. Thankfully, most guys the better writers who come in and use him very, very well. I remember that storyline that you were referencing as well. I think that was leading up to what, Fantastic Four 200, with the thing or was that a different storyline? Because I remember
The
Reed and
Camelot
Doom,
one or the
yeah, with where they were duking it out in issue 200,
oh that no
where
that
they
one was I was thinking about the Iron Man when they go to Camelot. That one is also that's one of the that's well that's actually a long That's actually a long FF arc of the one of the few times in the 70s where they utilized Reed in a good way, where Reed loses his power and the team is like, you need to you need to, stay with us even without your powers. We need you. He's like, nope, I'm totally useless, and he keeps having to save them. Then he becomes the molecule man, and then at some point he gets a job. And I think in my head, I like when I first started the writing, I read that story and then I forgot about it. And I recently read it. I was like, oh my God, one of my FS stories totally swiping Reed getting a job with somebody that looks like Doom and it actually become Doom. It's actually his son is the person who's his benefactor because Reed is like, I'm out of the hero business. And the Fantastic Four are like, no, we can still do it even with your powers. And he already showed he can, but he's like, no, it doesn't work. And he works for this guy that looks like Doom. And then, of course, he becomes they brainwash Doom. He becomes the Impossible Man, captures the Fantastic Four, and they actually have them all captured in Doom's lair. And you find out that Doom is behind the guy who's who actually hired a Reed. And then, of course, that leads to this big solar thing that Doom has made to show show Reed how smart he is, and that leads to their big fights. But it's a storyline that's begun with Roy Thomas, then it goes to Lin Wen, and then it goes to Marv, and it's like a whole time, more of a Reed story, but it ends with a big Doctor Doom story where they actually fight it out. And it's interesting because obviously the stuff in Doctor Doom's wheelhouse is a straightforward fight between the two of them would lead for Reed to not win, which was where you could see it going. But it was good to see Reed kind of duke it out. But of course, his brain and helps him out where he able to get Doom in a place where he actually loses. So yeah, that's
oh,
definitely a powerful
that's
story.
good character. That's good characterization for Reed Richards. Reed Richards is just too smart of a guy to duke it out with some. I could see somebody else look. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to block, and I'm going to. Reed's brain is so expansive. He's like, yeah, I'm going to block, and oh, by the way, if I just move him a little bit this way, the vibration will make this thing fall down on his head. He's just that's just a totally. There's no. I understand that some other guys would just go and I'm going to give Reed a badass moment or something of that nature. But if you're writing Reed Richards to his ability, that type of stuff should never happen. Same thing with Doom. Doom just like, oh, we're gonna have a bare knuckle brawl. He's like, Doom? Just bare knuckle? And I'm doing the wrong thing because I wanted to end it there so I could get to the last book. Because we could just keep talking about our love for Doctor Doom as a character. But again, if you're looking for a book to invest in, and I split it, Fantastic Four #5, Fantastic Four Annual #2. Definitely good investments. And so we get to our last one. And remember, none of these were not in any order of preference or hierarchy, just throwing out.
This is #1. Keep going. No, sorry.
just throwing them out. Last book is going to be a split between two books, another split. Green Lantern 87, first appearance of John Stewart, and Spawn #1.
And
Spawn will be
Spawn.
Spawn is yep, Spawn #1. Spawn is the only indie book that I threw on this list, but it is the only indie book coming out of the 90s that has really appreciated in value. Spawn has a run of over 300 comics, a dedicated fan base, and eventually we will see another Spawn film, and that's definitely going to change the game for Spawn as a character overall. He's got a universe of comics now. It's just smart money. If you have a copy of Spawn, which most people do,
Yeah,
you can
that's
hold. If you have a copy of Spawn, you can hold on to it. If you got a copy of Spawn that's a newsstand copy, definitely hold on to it because all of those prices are going to go up. I mean, Spawn is a book that sold over 1 million copies, I believe, out of the gate, or maybe close to 2 million out of the gate. That's not a book that should be terribly high priced, and you will still get
That's
prices on
what I'm
that book of 20. You still get 25. You can still get $25 a copy for that book, and it's not an impossible book to find. It's just not. But people respect that book, and the pricing out it shows that the respect that that book is coming. I mean, it's that is the premier image book out of that era. Spawn is the last man. Spawn is the well, Spawn is Savage Dragon, if you will. But
Oh
without a
God.
doubt, without a doubt, Spawn is a Spawn number one, and Green Lantern 87. Green Lantern 87, without a doubt. The first appearance, it was tough because I was thinking about Guy Gardner, but you know, John Stewart, a lot of people like John Stewart because of his appearance on the Justice League cartoon.
Yeah.
That was the Green Lantern that they were introduced to, and that makes it a really good investment. The the thing that I'm sitting here is like I mean, it's hard to say that you love a character because there's so many of them, and then it sounds kind of like just lip service. Oh, I love Hal Jordan, I love John Stewart, but it's true. You can when you're into comics and these characters, you just love a wide range of them, and they're great characters. So I really love Hal Jordan. We never got to see Hal Jordan really explored in most of the mediums that we saw. It was John Stewart on the Justice League, and then when we saw him in the film wasn't very well received.
Mhm.
And but John Stewart is the Green Lantern for a lot of people who watch the cartoon. They would love to see him in a film. So that's a great investment. I am looking to obtain a copy of that if I can find a really nice one for a decent for a price I'm willing to pay. Not too far out of range. And I'm just trying to wait because that's just going to happen. They got a Green Lantern series coming. There's a ton of Green Lanterns, but without a doubt, John Stewart is one. So that's our top 10, where well, more like top 12, if you will, but I had to split a couple of them.
All right then. So go out there and take out your savings and buy those books if you can, or if you have
if
them, you got something. You got something of worth.
if you're looking to invest and there's strategies, maybe I'll do another show with that. There's strategies that you can do in order to try to find the book. It's similar to people who buy stock. You try to dollar cost average, and you can definitely get they're not out of range. They're not out of range, and I can already hear, oh, I'm not spending X amount of dollars on a comic book. That's fine. That's fine. I don't disagree with you. I don't think comic books are necessarily things are for investment. However, they do, the right comics do appreciate with value, and I believe the list that I just gave are the right comics that will appreciate with value if that's the route you choose to go.
So that's it. Thank you, and everybody out there, please subscribe, like, and comment, and argue as much as you want with us.
Or
Spin a
give us
rack.
your top, or give us your top 10 list. You think you know better? Hey, tell us what you know.
Spin a rack.
Out.
Later.